Hey pals, my name is Blaine, and you're watching Blaine's World of Reviews. Now, I know it's been a minute since the last time I posted on this channel, uh, probably like 3 years now, but I really, I wish I had a better excuse other than I just didn't feel like it. But I'm feeling rejuvenated, feeling very excited to continue on and making content on here. I really do enjoy talking about movies. And today, I figured with the release of Spider Man Brand New Day, I would start a little bit of a Spider Week and start with Sam Raimi's Spider Man 1. I do intend on getting back into the swing of things with my MCU series. I just got a little burnt out by the time I hit Iron Man 2. And once that review comes out, you guys will see why. But I figured this week would be a really, really good time to kind of just be in the Spidey mood, in the Spidey season with the new film coming out. So Spider Man 1 is going to be where we start, and I'm going to work my way all the way to Brand New Day. So, yes, I will be reviewing the brand new film, Brand New Day, whenever it comes out this week. So, we got a lot of movies to get through and not a lot of time to get through them. So let's get started. Now, just a quick disclaimer. If you haven't seen Spider Man, it's been, 20 some years now since this movie came out. I highly recommend that you watch it before watching this video because I will be spoiling everything. So if you somehow haven't managed to watch the Sam Raimi Spider Man movies, I don't know what you've been up to the past couple decades, but I really, really recommend going in and watching these fresh before you see this review because I will not be holding back on spoilers or keeping any content that I want to discuss back. So if you really, really are interested in this movie, I really recommend watching it first before you go ahead with this review. All right, so let's get into it. Sam Raimi's Spider Man 1 is maybe my most rewatched movie of all time. This right here is actually my childhood VHS. It's beaten to all shit, but it is the one that I popped in the VHS or the VCR, I should say, every day as a kid. I can quote this movie easier than pretty much anything else. And so this movie is super pivotal to my love for superheroes, my love for this kind of genre, and also just my love for movies in general. This is the first movie I can vividly remember being like, "Oh my god, how did they do that? How does a filmmaker do this sort of thing?" And so I think that this movie is just such a huge part of who I am. I think one of the most impressive parts about this movie is just that the opening is so well done. If you haven't seen this movie in a while, I dare you to try and go back and watch it as if you had no idea who Spider Man is. I know that that's a hard concept to kind of wrap your head around because Spider Man is so like ubiquitous now with nerd culture and with the world in general. He's one of the most well known characters. But Sam Raimi does such a phenomenal job of giving you all of the information that you need within those first like 15 minutes. It's actually insane from like a script writing perspective how he's able to introduce all the pivotal characters, all of the things that you need to know about their relationships, and sort of just where they're all coming from. He makes like the quickest turnaround when it comes to giving you the information that you need and getting the story going within like a very, very short amount of time without it feeling rushed at all. Like this is one of the best openings to any superhero movie I've ever seen, just from the standpoint of like being able to get across the point of the character and everything that you need to know before starting everything else, but also not like belaboring the point. Like he doesn't hold on to it for super long. We don't need a long scene of each character getting big backstory moments. He hits the important parts that everybody should know about these characters and then gets the ball rolling. Within the first 15 minutes of this movie, Sam Raimi is able to portray who Peter Parker is, what his motivations are, the fact that he's just a dorky kid that everybody picks on, who Mary Jane Watson is, and, her kind of relationship to Peter or lack thereof. Harry Osborn and his relationship with his dad and how strained that is. And also how you can tell that Harry's already a little bit jealous of Peter because the moment that Norman meets Peter, he obviously respects him in a way that he never has Harry. They set up all of these things that are going to be super important later within the first 15 minutes. Like this script is so tight and it's able to just hit the important points of every single character and then you get right to the point where Peter gets bitten by the spider. Like there is no playing around. There's no extra backstory stuff that we have to cover in this section of the film. They just hit you with all of the important information right from the get go, and you get Spider Man getting bitten by the spider right away. I mean, honestly, like there's a danger in that style of script writing that possibly, it's going to feel rushed, or it's going to feel like you don't have enough information to be attached to these people yet. But somehow they managed to pull it off. Like this, I can't stress it enough. The opening of this movie is so phenomenal for setting up this character. And if you were somebody who had no idea who Spider Man was, I think that this would still be the perfect introduction to the character. Now, let's talk a moment about casting. Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. I know that there are some people who have come around to say, oh, he's too goofy, he's too nerdy, he's too weird. If you're looking for me to not be biased or not have my nostalgia goggles on, you're gonna have to find somebody else to watch because Tobey Maguire to me, just in my brain, is Spider Man. Like he was the first person I associated with this character, and so when I see him on screen or I see him in another project, I'm just like, oh, that's Spider Man. So like. He is the character to me just emotionally, but I do see where people come from where it's like, oh my God, he's a complete dork all the time, even whenever he is Spider Man. That's a little bit like different from how he is in the comic books. But I do feel like it's a good performance and a good take on the character because getting superpowers wouldn't automatically make you cooler. Like you would still be that dorky guy. You would still just like have superpowers now. And so I think that the direction that they went with Tobey Maguire in this movie and in the later movies makes a lot of sense and it makes him really, really endearing. I can understand why people would think that this isn't their favorite version of the character, but for me, it's just Spider-Man in my brain. Like it was the first Spider-Man I was introduced to. So of course, this is what's going to stick out to me as Spider-Man. If you want to talk about perfect casting, Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin is one of those one in a billion casting decisions. And from what I understand of this movie, he had to like fight for this role. Like it wasn't something that they were even considering having him as the part. And he had to pretty much like market himself to be able to get this part. And that just blows my mind because once you see Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin, there's just nobody else that can do it right. Like he is just this character to a T. Like it's one of those moments you look at a movie and a person playing a specific character, and once they've done it, there's just nobody else who can fill those boots. And so I really do feel bad for, once we're on our fifth Spider-Man actor later in the future, and they do decide to come around and do a different Norman Osborn, that person's going to have a big uphill battle, some big shoes to fill when it comes to Willem Dafoe's portrayal of this character. Because in my opinion, it's like a pitch perfect performance. And while we're on the subject of pitch perfect performances, you cannot talk about the casting in this movie without talking about J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Again, I don't know what the casting director was on when they made this movie, but they were just, it was just a generational casting choice. Like he is so phenomenal as J. Jonah Jameson. I laugh because when I think of the character, I don't even think of the comic book version, or when I'm reading the comic book version, I just hear J.K. Simmons' voice coming out of the character. Like he is J. Jonah Jameson, and he's just so funny in this movie. Like he is hilarious. Like I, I can't like even now just thinking about him, I think about some of the lines like meat, a big box of Christmas meat. That's the best I can do for you, kid. Get out of here. Like just like he's just so wonderful in this part. Like I don't know like anyone else who could do it better. And I think it speaks to like his acting talent because like later on when they decided they wanted to bring back J. Jonah Jameson, I should say, they brought back J.K. Simmons for the Tom Holland universe. Like they knew that there was nobody else that was going to be able to pull off this part the way that he has. And so his performance in this movie is just legendary. And I'm so glad that we live in a world where he got to play this character because it's perfect casting. One of the other casting calls in this movie that I actually think is a little overhated or maybe just like, I don't know, people are just weird about the character. I really like Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson. I think that, especially in this movie, she's able to pull off the Mary Jane sort of vibe from the comics of being someone who is clearly very deeply moved by Peter, his emotions, like his feelings. Like she obviously cares about him. But the second that she's given the opportunity to be like the party girl or to go back into like being the popular person, she takes that shot. Every time Flash shows up on screen, she starts acting like that. Like, and so I think that she is like a very complex character in this movie. I don't know if some people are just turned off by that sort of vibe, but I think that Kirsten Dunst does a really, really good job of like playing the two different versions of this character that she has to be. And so I love the casting decision of her as this character, and I think that she gets better over the movies. I really do think that they started off really strong with this one, and then later on in the series, she becomes a more well-rounded character. But yeah, I really have no problems with her performance. I think that she is another really good addition to this cast. Now, if there is a weak link in this cast, I would say that it's James Franco as Harry Osborn. He's not bad. He's not horrible by any means. He just doesn't really have a lot to do other than be kind of jealous of Peter, try to date Mary Jane, also be kind of jealous of Spider Man. I mean, like he didn't have a lot to do in the script, but also I feel that James Franco in this movie and even in the next one, his performance is just a little bit lacking, a little bit flat. I feel like everybody else kind of knew the assignment of the movie that they were making and kind of like turned up the cheese a little bit, whereas it feels that James Franco is taking it very, very seriously, almost to a fault. Like I'll get to it a little bit later, but there's like a scene with him talking to Peter at the end of the movie, and I think they're just trying to like have him be as detached and deadpan as possible, but it more so just comes off as like kind of boring and just not well fitting for the character. Like I said, I don't think he's bad by any means. He serves his purpose for the plot. I do just kind of wish that we got a little bit more from that performance and in the writing department as well to see him be a little bit more protective of Peter because we hear throughout this series that they are super, super close. But we never really see that. Like we see them kind of hang out around each other. But for most of this movie, Harry's kind of being a dirtbag to Peter. Like he's going after a girl that Peter clearly likes. Like he's constantly like visibly jealous of Peter because of the respect that he has for Norman. Like there's just so many parts in this movie where like it feels more so like they're setting up for Harry to be a villain later on, which of course they ended up doing. But instead, he just kind of comes off as just like a boring character in this one. But getting back to the plot, once the opening of this movie happens, Peter gets bitten by the spider. Things just, I mean, they keep going at the same sort of breakneck pace. I like that Sam Raimi doesn't ever take his foot off the gas in this movie. For some people, that might be a little overstimulating or it might like leave you wanting a little bit more. But I think for a story like this where you have so much to introduce, I love that he just hits all of these notes really quickly, but also really effectively. And a good example of that is right after Peter gets bitten. You have the birth of Spider Man, of him developing his powers overnight. At the same time, you get the birth of the Green Goblin, with Willem Dafoe getting his powers at the same time. So you have both of these characters being born in the same night, and it works super duper well. Like it's really, really well done because you don't have to have like these separate moments throughout the movie, like having them happen at different points. You're just able to get things going and have these two characters on a very similar trajectory, just in opposite directions. And so it makes it a lot easier for you to follow both of their stories as they happen simultaneously. And it also makes you really excited for once they finally converge. And when they do, of course, it's phenomenal. And slightly before that transformation scene where Peter finally gets his powers, the two, I don't want to say best characters of the series, but two of my favorites and the best casting. Again, I don't know what this casting director was on, but they were phenomenal. Cliff Robertson as Uncle Ben and Rosemary Harris as Aunt May. I mean, just like I just want to hug these people. Like Uncle Ben of this movie is again like the most perfect representation in my mind of comic book Uncle Ben. He's so sweet, but he still has a little bit of sternness in him. You can tell that he cares so deeply about Peter and what he's going through and wants to be there for him, but doesn't want to overstep his bounds. Like their relationship is so well put together with the short amount of time that we actually spend with them on screen together. Like it's just so incredible that they're able to make these short scenes so poignant so that whenever the things happen later in the script that tear these characters apart, like you feel it, and it doesn't need to be like a drawn out 3 hour sequence of them, growing a relationship. You can feel the history between the three of these characters with Pete, Aunt May, and Uncle Ben. Like you can feel how much they care for him and how much like they just want what's best for him within the first few times meeting them. Like it's really impressive how they're able to pull off like this sort of relationship and make it feel lived in. And so yeah, again, just impeccable casting of those two as well. Now we're getting into my favorite part of the movie, or at least one of my favorite parts of the movie. Once Peter starts realizing he has his superpowers, this movie just becomes equal parts like fun and enjoyable, but also like hilarious. Like there's this scene of him on the rooftop trying to figure out how to use his webs for the first time, and he's doing the whole "Oh web, go!" lie. Like it's one of those scenes that just is going to stick in my head for the rest of my life. Like it's so funny, but also just so Peter Parker to me. Like the fact that he's just so goofy while also trying to figure out these powers. Like it's just I love that Sam Raimi does take little moments in this movie, especially like to be funny and to like show that he is just this dorky teenage kid getting superpowers. Like there are moments like that where you're just like, yeah, he's just 18. You know, I mean, like he's getting superpowers. I mean, he looks like he's 29, but he's 18 and he's getting these superpowers for the first time. And what would that actually look like? And I like that Sam Raimi takes the moments to kind of show us what that's like and also how scary that could be as well. Um, yeah, like there's a lot of scenes whenever it's first sort of developing where you're like, oh God, this would be terrifying. A scene that really works for me in this first stretch of the movie too is of course Peter getting his revenge on Flash Thompson, who I haven't mentioned up until this point. If you don't know Spider-Man comics, Flash Thompson is like the bully to end all bullies. Like when I think of a bully in any media, I think of Flash Thompson. Like that's just the first name that comes to my mind. And he's played very, very well in this movie by Joe Manganiello, I think is how you say his last name. He was also Deathstroke in the DC universe for like one scene. But he does a fantastic job, even though, again, he looks like 40 in this. He does a really good job of being imposing and intimidating. But the scene of Peter finally getting to one up him and use his powers to kind of get one over on him is super satisfying, but also a great way of showing his powers and kind of getting you the spider sense, his agility, all of these things kind of get shown to you in one brief little scene. So it serves multiple purposes, not just for the story, but also for the viewers as well, to get us that information without completely having to go to exposition. And so again, another really well done scene in the movie. I just love the scene of Peter getting to finally whoop Flash's ass after he's been such a jerk to him since the beginning of the movie. It's just so satisfying to watch. And so yeah, again, just Sam Raimi is so good with scenes like this because like he gives you important information, but under the guise of like just a fun, enjoyable scene. Like the way that he's able to weave these sorts of things together so seamlessly is just, it's honestly perfect in my mind. So after Peter one ups Splash and tries to use his spider powers for the first time and gets to crash into a wall hilariously, um, the movie kind of slows down for a brief moment to give us this scene between Peter and Mary Jane in her backyard or his backyard as well. Um, this is where the script can sometimes falter a little bit for me. The romantic dialogue of the script sometimes, I shouldn't even say sometimes, most of the time it's just really corny. Like there's a lot of scenes of just these two being goofy, like staring off into each other's eyes and her saying, you're taller than you look, and him saying, I hunch. There's just so many little moments between these two. And I think maybe that also plays into why some people don't like Mary Jane's because the scenes where these two are together, they have a tendency to be a little bit awkward. And so, if there is like one glaring issue with the script, I would say this scene and a later scene that takes place in a hospital, like it's just a little goofy. Like the romantic dialogue just doesn't really work in these scenes. Now, if you look at it from a character perspective, it makes sense that these two teenagers would have no idea how to talk to one another. Like it makes sense. But the way that they do speak to one another, it's like they're trying to be like Shakespearean about it, or they're trying to be super deep, and it's just not working whatsoever. So I do think that this is a part where the script kind of falters and leans away from just like the normal cheesiness of these movies into like kind of cringy cheesy to a point where you're just kind of like, "Ugh, I'm ready for this scene to be done." But that's not to say that this movie doesn't know how to hit the emotional beats right, because the next section of the movie, and really where he starts becoming Spider Man, is once he goes and he does the fight with the wrestler played by Macho Man Randy Savage. Also, just one of the best scenes of the movie. I got you for 3 minutes, 3 minutes of playtime. Like some of the best lines of the entire movie, and I quote them still constantly. Like I love this scene so much. But once that scene happens and you have Peter fight against Bonesaw McGraw, you have the whole scene of him letting the robber get away because he feels slighted by the promoter not giving him the money he feels he deserves. And then right after that leads into the death of Uncle Ben. They nail this whole section of the movie so perfectly. And this is really the best writing of the entire film. Like his whole argument with Uncle Ben right before this scene happens, of those two just going at each other. And not even, I shouldn't even say those two going at each other. It's more Ben trying to get through to him and Peter not knowing how to handle like this sort of criticism, especially because he's felt so powerless his entire life. It's just every time I watch this movie, I think it would get easier, but these scenes still just tear my heart into pieces. Lines in these scenes that really hit me the most are when Peter and Ben are in the car together, and Ben says, I know I'm not your father. And Peter says, well, then stop pretending to be. And you know that those are going to be their last words to one another. Like every time I rewatch this scene, I just want to jump through the screen and grab Peter and shake him and just say, stop. This is the last time you're ever going to see him. Like, please. And so it's so well done. And it's such a good adaptation of what happens in the comic, because then Peter lets the robber go. That robber kills Uncle Ben, or at least you think he does. They kind of retcon it later, but we'll get to that in the third movie. But all of this responsibility then falls onto Peter. And what I think is really interesting, not just in the way that this movie does it, but just in general about the Spider-Man character, is if you really look at him, the Spider-Man backstory and what happens to him, you change a couple of things and it's a supervillain story. You've got this dorky kid who gets picked on, who gets treated horribly, and he finally gets a taste of power, and he's able to push around the people that used to push him around. If not for Uncle Ben in this situation and what happens to him, but also what he tells Peter, the classic line of with great power comes great responsibility. If that doesn't happen, I genuinely think Peter Parker becomes a bad guy. Like I think that he has enough pride in him and also just enough selfishness in him before these events happened that he could have ended up like another Electro or another Shocker or someone like that who would just rob banks or do whatever for his own selfish reasons. So I do really think that, the way that they handled this in this movie is super important for understanding why the character goes from this sort of selfish mindset into being a hero later on in the film. Now, if we're talking about, some of the negatives I still have with this movie, there are parts, especially in this section after Peter finds Uncle Ben and, they have their last moment together and Uncle Ben dies. The CGI can be a little bit rough. It's not horrible, especially for 2002 standards, but it's definitely showing its age. And especially when Peter's in like the wrestler suit, everything just looks a little bit too slick, a little bit too computer generated. And luckily, I will say Sam Raimi as a director is very smart, because for every moment there's like a CGI scene, he usually interweaves it with something that is practical. And so you don't spend too long on any one CGI shot. And I think that that makes it more palatable, because I think they knew the limitations of the time, and they kind of worked around them. So I don't think that the CGI is bad enough to like make these scenes unwatchable, but it is still noticeable. Like it is still something that you can critique about the movie. Um, is it enough to make me not enjoy these scenes? Hell no. Like these scenes are still really, really enjoyable. But like I said, that CGI has aged. And there are a few times where you could just kind of be like, ugh, that looks like a video game, or that looks a little bit rough. So that's definitely something in this stretch, and especially like with it being such an emotional moment rather. When you see like the kind of dorky CGI, it kind of can pull you out of these moments a little bit. After Peter is able to hunt down Uncle Ben's killer and come face to face with him and realize that it was his own selfish actions that allowed this guy to go out and harm other people, and Peter gets the realization of how right Ben was about his "with great power comes great responsibility" speech. This movie becomes a superhero movie finally. He's not acting out of selfish reasons. Peter finally realizes, hey, it's time for me to live by what he taught me and be the type of person that he would have wanted me to be. And so again, I think that kind of, lends itself to what I said earlier about how Peter was very close to being a completely different person. But whether it was just his mistakes, but also just the father figure that he lost, the next part of the movie is able to take off. And I'm really glad that Sam Raimi and the writers of this movie decided to keep in this section, because some writers might, remove this. I mean, they kind of did that with the Tom Holland movies by not having Uncle Ben in them at all. And I feel that this is such an important part to the Spider-Man character, and it makes you care so much about what is going to happen with him next. Now, during the same time, you're also getting more of Norman's backstory. You've got him waking up after giving himself the goblin gas. And it's in moments like this that you remember that Sam Raimi is the same guy who directed The Evil Dead. There is a section, and maybe I'll just play the clip in this part. To this day, makes me jump. Like, here's the clip.
I don't know.
Have you been there all night?
Last night I was.
Yeah, so like that whole section makes me want to shit my pants every time I watch this movie. So Sam Raimi did not forget his horror roots when making this movie. There's a couple other little instances like that through this movie and the next two as well. And so I do love those little moments, though. I love that he kind of gets to flex his horror roots in these movies. But man, when I was a kid, I used to have to fast forward some of these past some of these sections, I should say. Like it just scared the shit out of me every time that little flash happens and it kind of just like jolts you awake. And even when you turn this movie down, I challenge you, if you're going to rewatch this movie, you could turn this down to almost like, mute. And that scene still jumps out at you. And so I love that he got to do that, but also screw you, Sam Raimi, for giving me nightmares as a kid. Now, it's after the midpoint of the movie where you finally get to see Spider Man in his suit in all of his glory. The Sam Raimi Spider Man suit is just one of my favorites. Like, it's just, I mean, here he is right here. The raised webbing, phenomenal. The mask, I love so much. Like, there's stuff about this costume that they obviously took liberties with to make it more cinematic. And obviously, it's a little bit weird that a teenager was able to put this together. But if you're able to suspend your disbelief, this costume looks phenomenal. And I really, really love that this is what they decided to go with. I love some of the later costumes in the series as well, but this one is just so nostalgic for me. Now, on the other hand of things, some people really, really disliked what they did with Green Goblin. I will say, like, maybe the bodysuit could have used a bit of work, I should say. I really like what they did later on with the Willem Dafoe Green Goblin in No Way Home, and we'll talk about that, a lot later down the line, where they kind of gave him a little bit more texture and things to do with the suit. But then we never really got to see him how this action figure looks with the helmet, but then the rest of the garb on as well. So we've never really gotten the perfect Green Goblin in my mind. But I do think that the Green Goblin in this movie, for what they had at the time, works really well. And this helmet is just iconic. Like when Marvel Legends came out with this helmet, I had to have it just because like it is the best part of the costume. Some people say this costume is a little bit too Power Rangery, and yeah, I mean it is. But I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think for what they were going for, it works. If you've seen any of the behind the scenes of this movie and what they almost did with like the full animatronic head and all of that stuff, I don't really think that would have worked. I mean, it looked kind of cool, but I do think for what they had at the time with the technology that was available, this is the best version of the Green Goblin that we could have gotten. Now, it is in this section of the film that I do feel there is one area of pacing that I would have liked to see changed, and that's just getting to see Peter do like maybe his first night of like crime fighting, not related to the Uncle Ben thing, but in the suit, like trying things out for the first time. They kind of just montage through like the first few months of him being Spider Man, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because then you get to see him as Spider Man, like already having kind of learned the ropes a little bit. But I would have liked to have seen like at least one scene of him suiting up for the first time, seeing the reaction from some thugs of like seeing him in his costume for the first time. Like, I do think that that was kind of a missed opportunity, but it doesn't detract from the overall viewing experience. It's just something that I would have liked to have seen. Just because, like, you start from the beginning of the movie, he wears the wrestler costume when he takes out Uncle Ben's killer, and then after that, it's just, oh, he's Spider Man now. And so I do think that there is just a little section, even just a scene missing during that time that would have been a little bit better for like the overall just transition from that point to where we're at currently in the movie. But once we do get Spider-Man in action, we finally get J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, who I've already gushed about. Phenomenal. Elizabeth Banks as Betty. I also think that she's really, really good. The whole cast of just like the Daily Bugle, Ted Raimi, like everybody in there is just really, really good. Like I feel like they're like there's a lot of history between these people, and they feel like a very, very close knit like group. And so again, the script is really, really good at giving these characters like a sort of lived in feeling. And also so do the sets, like the actual sets for this movie, the buildings, everything like that. Like everything feels lived in. The set design is really, really good for making it feel like a world that has these characters in it and that they have lived in. I think that everything just kind of came together perfect. Now, it's during this section of the movie where a lot of things happen and they have to happen all at once. And again, they nail it in terms of like making sure that the pacing is just fast enough to where it doesn't ever feel sluggish. But it does kind of, get to the point quickly. So you have the big, I can't even remember what they call it, the festival that happens in the movie, and your first confrontation between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. Love this scene. There's so many great moments, like the pumpkin bomb being thrown at the dudes and turning them into skeletons, which is so freaking goofy and corny, but it just works for me. Um, all the fighting between the two of them is really, really good. I feel like every punch that these guys throw, like, just like sounds like it's like a thunderclap or something. Like they really, really did like big moments with the sound design to make everything feel like a comic book and sound like impactful. And so this whole scene, I think, is really well done. There's a lot of practical effects mixed again with the CG. I think the CG looks significantly better in this section than it did earlier whenever it was at night. I wonder if it's just maybe the lighting or, it's a little bit further away in the parts where they use CG. But I do think that this section kind of holds up a little bit better in terms of the visuals. Now, after this, you get I think what is the most iconic imagery from the movie, and that is whenever Spider-Man and Mary Jane kiss when he's upside down. I mean, talk about an iconic shot. I think on every one of these little movies here, that's the shot that they used. Like, and of course it is. Like, it's just iconic in a way that just it doesn't get any better than that. Like, they really, really just they nailed it with this shot, and the fact that it works as well as it does, and it feels as romantic as it does. It's just a testament to what they were able to accomplish with this, but also the fact that they had actual Toby Maguire up there, like upside down, like props to him, and also like it raining into his nose. I'm assuming like there's a lot that could have gone wrong with this scene, but it looks so beautiful. It looks so good. And so again, just this movie is so full, like chock full of like iconic moments. But this, I say, is like the one that sticks out to anyone who's ever seen this movie before. The back half of the movie is where things can falter a little bit for me in terms of pacing. It's not bad by any means, but there is the section that has become a meme now of Aunt May getting hit by the pumpkin bomb. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but it's just one of those scenes that once you've seen it memed, it just sticks out to you in that way. But after that, there is like a long stretch in the hospital with her where things kind of slow down a little bit. There is like a slower scene earlier in the movie during Thanksgiving, but I do feel like that one has a little bit more plot relevance because you're finding out that Norman is figuring out who Spider-Man is, and Spider-Man's trying to, keep his secret in front of everybody. Like there is like tension in that scene. Whereas I feel like once you get to the section of the movie where they're in the hospital, I think that it can like feel a little bit slow. And I think that's the only time in the movie where things kind of like grind to a halt for just like a 10-15 minute stretch. I do feel like there is just a little bit too much of like the romantic scenes, and then also the Peter and Aunt May scene of them like talking about the romantic scene that just happened. Like that's the one part of the movie where I feel like the scenes were just a little bit too stretched and almost felt like a little soap opera-y as well. And so I would say if there's a weak point of the movie when it comes to the script, I think it's just this chunk where things get a little bit kind of just slow. And during all this time, there are a couple more confrontations, I guess you can call them, between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. I hesitate to call them confrontations because they're honestly like scenes that I could not see happening in a superhero movie today. A good example is whenever the Green Goblin knocks Spider-Man out and then just kind of gives him a talking to on a rooftop. Like that scene, again, another memed moment of the movie where he's just kind of leaning next to him and talking to him. Like it's a good scene. Like it's funny, it's iconic, but it is something that I feel like is kind of goofy, but in the best way. Like it is like super entertaining to me. But like they don't really have like another big fight scene until the end, so that's why I didn't really take a long time like discussing these scenes of the movie because they're there, they're fun, they're entertaining, but they don't really do much for the overall plot. They just kind of give us a couple more confrontations with these two before the big one at the end of the movie. Speaking of that final confrontation, I do feel that this is where the story kind of picks back up, obviously, from that little lull that happens in the story. And the finale of this movie, I think, is just as close to perfect as it could be. There are a couple of times where the CGI can look a little bit iffy, but nothing that's too noticeable. But the whole scene of them being on the bridge of the Green Goblin making Spider-Man try to choose between saving the kids or saving Mary Jane, like this whole section of the movie is just such good like comic book cheese, and I mean that in the best way possible. Like it feels like a comic book come to life. And so I think that this is just one of those scenes that like anybody who has seen this movie, it just sticks out in your head. Like it is just one of those iconic ending scenes to a movie. But also, once you get past the point of Peter saving Mary Jane and the kids, the whole scene that happens in that like I don't know if it's like a cemetery or like abandoned warehouse or whatever it is, it's brutal. Like a lot of superhero movies, especially like PG-13 ones, it feels like they pull punches in a way that this movie just does not. Like once the final fight happens between the two of these guys, it feels like they are genuinely trying to murder each other. Like it's actually kind of crazy how like violent it gets in this section. Like there are parts that are hard to look at where you see Peter just getting his shit pushed in essentially. Like I mean he's really getting the shit kicked out of him by Norman, and it's difficult to watch. And so I loved that they were willing to go there, and I think that that's why having a director like Sam Raimi is good for a project like this, because I think that he with his background being horror films, he knows how to make a scene like this where there is a bit of blood and gore, a little bit of like brutal action. He knows how to make that feel impactful, but also like devastating because this is a character that we've grown so attached to for the whole rest of the movie. And so like it is just one of those scenes that like I just don't see very often in superhero movies these days. And during this final confrontation, another thing that I wanted to make note of is I think it works as well as it does because so much of it's practical. Like there's not a shot in here. If there is like CGI at any section of this part of the movie, like it's not noticeable to me. Like every part of this actually feels tangible. It feels brutal. There's the part where Spider-Man webs the wall and pulls it down. Like they're beating the shit out of each other, and there's bricks flying everywhere. Like that, you can tell that so much of this is practical. You see the dust flying off of them, the blood coming out of their mouths. Like all of that just works as well as it does because of the practical effects. And so I wanted to make note of that as well, because when they do decide to go practical, especially in a scene like this that's sort of confined to a smaller space, it really does like take the movie from good to great in these action scenes. And it's during this final confrontation that, of course, you see the Green Goblin die by his own hand with the glider. But it's really the moment before that that kind of ties this movie in a neat bow for me. It's the part where Norman says to Peter, I've been like a father to you. Be a son to me now. And then Peter says, I had a father. His name was Ben Parker. Like that moment, like I'm trying to didn't expect to get emotional, but like that moment is like so beautiful and poignant for showing the growth of this character from the beginning of the movie to the end. I think it's one of those lines that just it just shows you the growth of the entire movie in one sentence. And I love that line so much, and I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough in this movie. There is one line in this section that isn't a problem for me now. Like if you just watch this movie on its own, it's not a big deal, but it is something that will affect the next two movies a lot, and it frustrates me. It's where Norman looks at Peter and says, "Don't tell Harry," and then Peter, for the next two movies, decides not to tell his best friend that his dad was a murdering psychopath and that he didn't kill him, or like it just later on in the series, that's one of the issues that I have with it's something that I just mention now because later on I will dive into that a little bit more when we talk about Spider-Man 2 and 3. And so I just wanted to make note that this is the origin of that line and of that way of thinking. But every time I hear him say that and then I see Peter's reaction to it, I want to just reach to the screen and be like, he doesn't mean it like that. Like, please do not keep this from your friend. Like, it's going to be really, really unfortunate for you later. But yeah, that's just one of those like knowing how the series goes moments where you're just sitting there and you're like, God damn it, why did you say that? And then with the movie wrapping up, of course, there's the final scene where you get to see him in the cemetery with Harry, with everybody else who we've kind of met along the way. Even Flash is in this section of the movie. I do feel that this scene is really well done. The only section of it that I am not in love with is one I mentioned earlier with Harry being like, I swear on my father's grave that Spider-Man will pay. I feel like they really told James Franco to seem detached, and he took that as like being like a block of wood because that's how it feels in this moment. And so that little moment kind of takes me out of the scene. But you do get a good moment of Peter and Mary Jane being romantic with one another, and it doesn't feel overly cheesy. Like there still is a level of cheese there that kind of like gives you the heebie-jeebs or that kind of cringe feeling. But I do feel like that it works a lot better because you have Peter growing as a person and realizing like as long as I'm Spider-Man, people are going to get hurt, and I can't be selfish, and I need to, no matter how much I want to tell her that I love her in this moment, I have to think about what's best for her. I really do think that that's a good moment of character growth, and your heart hurts for Peter. And it's also something that like works in the context of the comic books. It's something that Peter Parker is constantly having to deal with, which is, the responsibility of being a hero, but also having to be Peter Parker all the time. And the next movie really hits on that well. But I love that the end of this movie kind of sets that up kind of perfectly. Like you get to see Peter make that decision, and it feels like the whole next movie is him dealing with the ramifications of that decision. So they really do tie up the ending of this movie in a bow, and like I feel like the end is just really, really well done. And then of course you get the final swing sequence where he's swinging through New York City, and you get to see him in front of the American flag and all of that stuff. Like there's so many iconic shots just in this last little stretch of the movie. And I love the way the camera works in this section as well, where he's swinging through. Sam Raimi kind of talked about it in a way where he wanted it to feel imperfect and like you were swinging along with Spider-Man. And these crane shots that they're able to accomplish, especially for a 2002 movie, it's phenomenal. Like there's so much in these scenes of swinging through the city that just like feels so real, and it's so impressive what they were able to accomplish in a 2002 film. But yeah, with the story out of the way, I mean, it's very clear that I love this movie. This movie means so much to me. It's just one of those movies, like I said, that like is so formative to just me as a person. Like obviously, I mean, I have this movie in several different versions. I don't even think this is all of the ways I have this movie. I have it digitally a few places as well. Like this is just one of those movies that I could put it on anytime and never be sick of it. I'm sure you could ask my wife, and she would tell you that she's very sick with me. But it's a movie I watch at least once a year, and it's one that just means so much to me. And so I cannot be unbiased about this movie whenever it comes to my rating of it. If you would have asked the young me, like he rates this movie, it would be a 10 out of 10. As I've grown older, these issues that I have sort of developed with it have come up, but they've never made me dislike this movie in any way. If anything, they really kind of have given me an appreciation for the series as a whole and watching it grow, and sort of learning from some of these mistakes. Because I do feel like the second movie kind of learns from some of these and then kind of chops it a little bit better and even, grows from here. And we'll get to that in the next one. But I mean, as far as like my rating now, I would probably give this movie like an 8 out of 10. It's just so good. Like it's one of those movies that if you haven't seen it for whatever reason, or people have made it sound like, oh, it's this like super cheesy, like dated movie. I don't think it is. Again, I'm super biased, but like I think that there is enough fun and like big comic book moments and just big movie moments that happen in this film that like justify watching it. Like if you haven't seen this, I cannot recommend Spider-Man enough. So those are my thoughts on Spider-Man from 2002, the very first Spider-Man movie that we ever got on the silver screen. Yeah, this movie is awesome. It's such a good time. I really hope that you guys will watch along with me, or if you have thoughts that you'd like to leave in the comments below, please tell me what you feel about this movie. If you love it, if you hate it, what it is about this movie that's special to you, or what about this movie just didn't work for you. I would love to hear your opinions down in the comments below, just to have a dialogue about this, because this is one of those movies I could talk about for hours. I'm probably going to get done editing this video and think of a million other things that I wish I would have said or included with this. So if you guys have any thoughts, any input on what this movie means to you, I would love to hear that feedback down in the comments below. All right, so that's my first review back in 3 years. So I'll see you guys in another 3 years. No, but I do plan, like I said, to continue on with these Spider-Man movies. So you'll be seeing my face again very soon. But for now, my name is Blaine, and you've just watched Blaine's World of Reviews. Please feel free to like and subscribe. And also, you can follow me on any of my social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on X/Twitter, I'm on Threads. Feel free to reach out and let me know what it is that you would like to see me review and talk about next. And those tags will be down in the description below. I'll see you guys next time.